Hey everybody, welcome back. I know it's been a minute since we posted any videos, so it's so great to have Denise back, and it's so great to be back. I just wanted to remind you guys before we get going to please hit like and subscribe no matter which channel you found us on, especially because we're planning on coming back with a vengeance this year. So we'll have a couple more videos coming out this month. So don't forget to do all the YouTube fun stuff, the like, subscribe, and please feel free to comment. So to keep track of what we're going to be talking about throughout the year.
Yes, we love to hear what you think, and it will encourage us to keep getting these videos going. So thanks, Mary Beth. I'm so excited for our topic today because we're going to talk about how you can communicate with your own pets without using words. So you're communicating with your own animals all the time, but you may not even realize how. Sometimes it's body language, sometimes it's by their behavior and whatever they're doing. So energetically connecting with your pet is just a different and unique way of also getting information from them.
Yes, exactly. Because whether you do animal communication or not, if animals are a part of your life, being able to communicate with them is so important, not only through health issues, but even just to truly deepen that connection with each other. So this is a fun topic that I love so much. And I know Denise and I have talked about a few times personally, because this can also be a hard topic. Even for myself, I've had to reach out to Denise a few times on some help with my own kiddos, because there's always an issue of bias and neutrality. Because not only do we live with them, but we are so closely connected with them. And let's be honest, sometimes we kind of want to hear a certain thing. And so we're worried about that neutrality coming up. So there are a couple of steps that we wanted to kind of talk about today to help that process of connecting with your animal a little bit better. The first one is, like I mentioned, the bias and neutrality is just finding your grounding space. Sometimes that can be a matter of just taking a few breaths. Sometimes it's just a matter of kind of centering yourself, but always kind of taking a pause, taking a breath, and grounding. The other one is to definitely kind of come in with some intention, whatever you want to do. If your animal's having an issue and you're wondering, do I need to go to the vet? Do I need to be worried about X, Y, and Z? State that intention. What is my goal of finding out? What am I asking today? And then take that breath. What do you think, Denise? Am I missing anything?
Well, along with that intention, it can be really helpful to set aside a specific time and in a situation to talk to your pets in this way, because I personally have to treat it like I am having a client and I say, okay, I'm going to sit down at this time to talk to my pets. It forces me to be kind of in a different mode where I'm not just like doing something, going about my day, and I'm like, oh, a question pops into my head, so I'm going to ask them right now. Because sometimes when that happens, I already have an idea in my head of what I think the answer is going to be, or I'm just busy, so there's other things going on. So along with that intention is creating an intentional space, I think, as well. And with the grounding, if you have time to do a meditation, that's always great. If not, just setting the intention of being neutral and really letting go of anything, any bias, anything that you might already have with you. And so that can just help just to know how important that is, and to just let go of any thoughts that are in your head already.
Yes. Yeah. Letting go of any preconceived notions, letting go of whatever you think you want to hear, and just kind of letting it come in, which brings us to the huge importance of practicing, because, and I think just setting up that practice, setting up that grounding space and that neutrality space, like we talked about, is so important from the get-go when you're learning how to do this, when you're practicing it, because then it can help you in case something massive comes up, or even it doesn't even have to be that massive. Let's say, a health concern pops up or a diet question comes up where, that neutrality or that bias is already kind of creeping up, because if you're like me, you might be a helicopter mom. So, but we won't talk about that, because that neutrality then gets, really involved. So, or really get skewed. So I think it's so important to kind of find that breath, find that practice, kind of letting go, that finding a space to kind of initiate that, that neutrality at a calm space is so important.
Well, animal communication is first and foremost a spiritual practice. So
Exactly.
anything that you can do for your spiritual health will also make you a better animal communicator, whether it's with your animal or a different one. And when we're talking about practice, it can also be really helpful to practice this with other animals. Try on a friend's animal where you can get some validation. Or I've got workshops, there are practice circles, there's places where you can do that, so you start to learn what it feels like when you're talking to a pet or an animal that you are not already connected to. And so I recommend that to people, even if you don't want to be an animal communicator, you just want to understand your own pet better. That can be a step in that direction, just to get some more practice and figure out what it feels like.
Yes, and also how you get that information, because I firmly believe you're communicating with that pet since day one, and sometimes even before day one, before you're physically together, you're communicating. But if you're brand new to this, you don't know what in the world you're doing, or you may not even realize what you're doing. And so understanding how you receive that information is so critical. So I think, like Denise said, one of the easy things, and for my personal animal communication growth, I had to practice with other animals, and that's how I kind of learned more, and then took it to my own animals, just because of, like, like we mentioned, that neutrality. So learning how you get information is key, because you can come in different, any sorts of ways. There's, all sorts of your senses. I mean, I know, Denise, we've talked about, we can hear things, we see things, we feel things, and sometimes all the above with one animal. But what does that truly mean? So kind of sitting in a workshop where you're able to connect with an animal to see how you're getting that information, I think, is key. And also a way you can play with it too, because I think a big thing with any kind of communication, but especially if you're getting started with your animals, is to have fun, taking the pressure off of it, make it a fun experience, connect with another animal that you can have validation with, like, like in one of our workshops, or, things like that, where, you'll find the validation, but you get to have fun seeing, okay, well, how is this animal going to tell me this?
Mm-hmm. Well, and be open to whatever comes through.
Yes.
That's really key, is we don't want to stop things before it even starts. So you might think, oh gosh, I don't hear things. I would never hear things. So be open, even if it's something you haven't experienced before. And I also want to remind everyone that when we're talking about hearing things or seeing things, it's in your mind's eye. So
Yes,
I
great point.
always thought that it was literally like somebody was standing there talking to you, and it's not really like that. So
You mean
that's
a ball isn't going to show up out of thin air?
no, I wish it was that easy. But that's why the practice is important, and just checking in with all of your senses. So if you want to sit down with your animal and ask them a question, put the question out there, and then notice, what do you hear, or what do you see, and what do you know? That's an important one too, because you may not have a specific way that it's coming through to you. You may just know something. So it's important to acknowledge everything, even if it seems like it's not meaningful, or if it feels like it's just in your head. It is really important to note that it probably is coming from the animal. And sometimes it's hard with your own animals because you have some of the same memories. So if I'm talking to a client and I say, tell me something that you enjoy, it's easy because it's not something that I already know. But if it's your animal, it's very likely they're showing you something that you enjoyed as well. So they're shared memories. So it's important to accept and trust that it's coming from the animal, because it could feel like it's just your thought or your own memory. And that's often how it is at first. And as practitioners, what we've done is we've learned what it feels like when that animal or when that information is coming from something other than us. And you can do that too. It just takes a
Totally.
little time and a little patience. So also don't get frustrated if it feels like it's not happening right away, because it is more complicated with your own pet. When I practiced on my own animals, I was like, I can't do this. This isn't working. And it wasn't until I worked with other animals that I actually believed that it was happening. So it requires a little more trust and acceptance when you're talking to your own pets.
Yeah, exactly. You said that the big word, which is trust, because a lot of times you may say, ask a simple question like, what is your favorite toy to your animal? And you already know that, but that's because you do already know that. You guys have already talked about it, and trust that you know that, and trust that, the information that they're giving you is information that they're giving you. They are communicating with you. There's been many times in my practice where, I'll be wanting to throw something away, like that doesn't make sense. And I'll mention it to the caregiver, and they'll be like, their mouth or they'll just fall open. They're like, oh my God, you got that. And it seems like the most far-fetched thing, but it's actually important. So I like, Denise said, is trust, I think, and don't throw things out, because they can be truly coming from the animal, and it's really important for you to know. So trust yourself, go with what you first hear. Don't try to make sense out of it immediately. If it doesn't make sense, maybe sit with it for a little bit, and remember, it's a practice. So I know, Denise, maybe you feel the same way, but being human, I like things that are visual too, because like we talked about, a lot of the information, there is nobody standing, to giving you information. I don't see an actual ball. I do actually feel things, but there's no visual components. So I thought another thing that would be important that we talked about is some other ways other than just telepathically or kind of how we get information through the senses, some visual things that we can go with that can kind of help people along this practice run. So one of the things I love is the blinking. I know people like Jackson Galaxy and some other people have talked about the slow blink. That's a big thing I recommend to people, and that's one of my favorite things to do. I do it even with my bearded dragon to my horse, little to small, real slow blink to you, and you can kind of grow from there. What do you think, Denise? Any other kind of...
Yeah, well, I love that too, because you're initiating that that conversation, and you can immediately get something back from them. And it is important to have fun with it, right? So you don't want to start necessarily by asking them, how their health is, or something really serious, but you can communicate with them by asking them for something. Like you may say, like, go pick up your ball. Just start with something slow, and sit and imagine what that looks like, and just try practicing if you can get them to listen to you, or maybe if they're in another room, just kind of call to them, without using words, like, come to me right now. And so kind of play with it, make it a game, and think of some ways that you can tell them something, and maybe you can see a response, and
I
just
love
kind of
it.
see how it goes.
Yeah, I love it. And this also goes a long ways when you're teaching tricks. People are so verbal. I notice it a lot with horses. We say, we're just so verbal. But if you actually imagine things like with your dog, sit, or if you're teaching them a new trick, try to imagine, what the motion or what you're going after, and then kind of incorporating it with kind of some trick training or different things like that. And kind of that can be your way of seeing how you're progressing, and also getting that visual feedback too, to kind of encourage you and keep you going. And I almost forgot to mention, and I just have to mention, Denise, real quick, if you'll forgive me, because I've made this mistake a few times, and I've noticed other people have, is your intention is so important, and always remember to imagine what you want to see. don't imagine what you don't want to see. For example, stop jumping up on the counter. Guess what? The animal is not going to understand stop jumping up on the counter. So what I always encourage people, whether, you're, even if you are speaking verbally, but if you're imagining, your goal is to have them not jump up on the counter, take the counter out of it. What do you think?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Show them the behavior that you want. And I always say animals don't understand the don't.
Yes.
So if you're sitting there thinking, oh God, I hope they don't bark at everyone today, that's what they're getting. That's the message is, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be barking at everyone. So
Exactly.
You want to think about from the more positive side of what is it that you want from them.
Yeah, because like even those of us riding, you say, oh, don't spook at this, don't spook it. Well, guess what your horse is going to be doing? Because the other thing is we start to tense, we start to get worried, things like that. And then, like you said, don't bark at the neighbor, don't do this. There's a whole connotation with that, both mentally, what you're telling the animal, and then also what you're speaking to the animal in body language and just vibes, I guess would be a good word, is what you're giving out. So just remember that when you're kind of setting your intention, is to try to make it as positive and as end result that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Specifically with behavioral issues, but it's also important just to have fun with it and be lighthearted and just see what comes through.
Yes.
Be open to anything that they might have to say. And I would also mention when I'm talking to my own animals, there's different kinds of questions that I might ask, right? Because we were talking about like the example, what's your favorite toy? That's something I might ask an animal that's a client if I'm trying to verify that I'm connecting with them. With my animals, I'm going to ask them things that are going to be more like, well, how do you feel right now? Or, why are you crying right now? My one cat cries. He carries toys around and cries. And I think he's actually talking to his toys. He's playing, but it sounds like he's crying. And so the types of questions that I'm going to ask my animals might be a little bit different. So you might want to ask things like if they like their food. It can also be helpful to go back to yes or no questions, right? And just notice, do you get a yes or a no? So you're not like just opening it up to just anything. So that's another thing that you can try if you're struggling a little bit, but give it time. They're not used to communicating with you in this way. They're used to however you have been communicating with them already. So this is just fun. This is just a fun, new, different way that you can try and deepen your bond with them.
Exactly. Give your both of you some time, because your animal may respond a little bit differently too, because like you mentioned, they're not used to this. They're not used to you kind of asking for them to communicate in this way. So yeah, exactly. At the heart of it, have fun, enjoy, and give both of you some grace. And I think the key to this is so important is practice. Practice not only communicating, but also finding that spot. I love, or that neutrality spot. Because one of the things I would highly recommend is kind of whether you do grooming sessions, whether you do just like little massage sessions, kind of just finding a quiet place, because, like we mentioned at the beginning, this is a spiritual journey too. And I think even incorporating them in with some meditation would be so, so helpful. And then you can kind of ease into, some of the communication, or just kind of sit in that space with each other, because growing as a partnership and deepening that bond is really the best part about being able to communicate with your pet, not only through emergency situations or kind of big questions, but just overall finding that bond together. Right, Declan? Perfect timing with Declan.
We breathe.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Declan. We planned that, y'all. We planned that look, that loving look too, right? On connection.
He was listening.
See, exactly. He's listening. But practice, 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 and have fun.
Absolutely. And we would love to hear from you. Leave a comment if you've tried this. Let us know if you get any messages from your pets. We would love to hear about it.
Yes, please. And if you have any tips that we haven't mentioned, please let us know, or things that have worked for you. Please feel free to share, and don't forget to like, comment, and especially subscribe, because we'll have plenty more videos coming to you guys in the next couple weeks and throughout the year. So looking forward to spending some time together.